called Google, who is censoring people in this country. And over 40% of their workforce might be foreign, and in particular coming from Asia and China. If you want to drill down even further, I think that these Bolsheviks and communist sympathizers are censoring people like myself and others. And at some point, I do think they need to be prosecuted. And I think that their assets should be seized. Anybody who has censored Americans and violated the U.S. Constitution, we need to pass laws to update this and take their assets away from them. Each company that doesn't know how to make sure that their employees are not willingly violating the laws should be punished. Folks, if you work at a corporation in this country and you start bashing women or other minorities or discriminate on the basis of their sexuality or their race or their religion, guess what? You get fired, okay? And then in some cases, you can have probably lawsuits brought against you. We need to update the laws and do the same thing in the United States for these types of unacceptable behaviors. And so that's my personal take on it. I am running for U.S. Senate for the state of Illinois. And if I get into office, that's one of the key things that I will be pushing for. It's not just going to be for an audit of the vote for the entire nation for 2020. The other thing that I'll be looking to do is make sure that critical race theory, which is nothing more than communist propaganda, is banned nationwide. And the third thing I'll be looking for is to take all these excess criminal type profits, because these organizations are run like criminal enterprises, and knock them back down because they are not paying people fairly. They're treating each of us as slaves with the use of our data and not properly compensating us. I would put in legislation that there's a certain minimum floor that they have to pay Americans, and then other companies can agree to pay people more for the use of their data. And then it could be a race to the top instead of the race to zero. Right now, the American people would be sucking in over $800 million a day if we got paid our fair share for the use of our data, for the revenue that's being created off of our data by these big tech companies. And then we would have the right to opt out and not let them sell our information like we're a piece of meat. That's what they do right now. They violate us. They literally do it in public, and then they take that money and they use it to weaponize our legislative process, to accumulate property across the country, to try to flip elections. They've been acquiring property possibly through trusts, as well as overseas entities, to try to hide their tracks. This is what we're up against, folks. They declared war on the American people and the right to freedom and justice for all. They think there's two sets of rules, one for them and one for everybody else. And I do think we need to fight back and knock out all the bums. What I mean by knock out is vote them all out in the upcoming election. With regards to this inflation number, just so you know, treasuries sold off just one single dollar, and then the TLT, and then have rallied right back. And so the treasuries are not selling off on this. And the VIX, believe it or not, the volatility index is actually down as well. It's at 16.5. It's down 8% today. So it's very, very interesting indeed that this stuff is not selling off with an inflation number as high as 5%. It's very fascinating, no doubt about that. And so when I this, and I'm thinking about, okay, well, what's going on? Why is there this very high level of inflation? And then meanwhile, asset prices are not selling off on this news. So for those of you who know or don't know, the markets tend to be forward-looking, this concept called forward-looking. Now, keep in mind, I do think that inflation is a problem. I've said I think it's a problem. And just because Bobby Piton personally thinks it's a problem and it's been showing up in the data, maybe there's other things taking place that I'm not really seeing just yet, along with everybody else. So I always try to keep a very open mind, especially since I manage money for a living. You can always check me out at preactiveinvestments.com, PREACTIV investments.com. And if you need somebody to talk to about managing your money, feel free to check out my site and fill out a form. if you want more information and so forth. But basically, you know, what I've spent my career doing this now for 25 years, is thinking through uh, what is the market pricing, like what it, you know, okay, there's a view of what I think economic reality looks like based on all these models, and then there's a view of how things are pricing right now in the world. And you have to make certain types of assumptions with regards to the length of a cycle, with regards to what's taking place with the cost structure, and all that type of jazz, I guess. And as you do that, you can sometimes have things back out of it. So you can have other information kind of pop out and give you some insights that you did not see, you know, before. And I think that that's super important for you to do, not just if you're managing your own money or if you have somebody managing your money on your behalf. Make sure that they're doing it. They need to be able to understand what is the market implying in the various prices that you're paying or what they're selling at, selling things at. And if they don't know how to do that, frankly, I think you need to look for another manager, because it's so important, because returns are generated off of expectations about the future and doing analysis as to what's the most probable path for that future. That's why the word preactive, it doesn't mean proactive. Preactive is we start with the end result that we're seeking and we reverse engineer to the present by looking at various paths on how to get there. And so let me get one second. So basically with what's taking place, there's a possibility that this is a one-time shock in inflation as we continue to decouple from China. This is my theory right now as to why the rates are not going up and why we've been absorbing this. It could just be that the Federal Reserve and the monetary system of this country, you know, like, you know, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury of the United States is making an effort to pin interest rates at a certain level and to massively debase the debt of the country. Like, we're going to debase what the debt is. Part of it is also we frankly may not have anywhere near as much debt as they say we have. Now, I happen to think that the numbers don't jive. I did a post today. You know, if you took 100 million households and you gave them $10,000 each. So if you sent a check for $10,000 to 100 million homes in America, 100 million families, it would cost you $1 trillion. That's what it would cost. So over the past 20 years, the government is trying to say that the debt of this country went up by 20 trillion, that we went from 50% of debt to GDP to 180%. And my attitude is the numbers don't add up. We can't have the quality of life of the average American fall, but meanwhile, the government telling us we're spending $1 trillion more than the government took in every single year on average for the past 20 years. Now, granted, it's a little back-ended. A lot of that trillions of dollars has been in the past couple of years because of this virus. But my point is the numbers just don't make sense. And so it begs the question, where are the offsetting revenues for all this deficit spending? Let's take a look at the videotape. How much money did publicly traded companies, private companies earn off of this so-called money that was being doled out? How much money was being shipped off to, you know, people that just didn't exist? They're all fictitious. And, you know, how many people are fictitiously created, through social media platforms? Now, personally, I think a lot of this money was just literally ripped off from America. I think we've been ripped off by globalist scumbags who have figured out how to have the American people take on the debt of building out China. I think a lot of the debt in China and they might have had a lot more if it wasn't our money being funneled off and shipped into China. I think there's an element of corrupt people in this government that might be doing that. I'm not saying it's happening. I'm saying is that I'm trying to think through logically, where the hell did that much money go? Where did that many trillions go? Maybe the whole thing in the Middle East with the wars that were going on, maybe that was just a cover for this heist. Maybe we didn't really have as many people go to the Middle East as they claimed. I'm not saying nobody went, folks. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying is if the government said there was 40,000 people, 100,000 people going there, maybe we need to do a damn count. And all the people that went there, raise your hand. Everybody raises their hand and they say, wow, why is the number of people in the United States right now that said they went to the Middle East, why is it half of what they told us? So how much money it went missing if that was true? Now, folks, I have no idea if this is the case. I'm just saying, I'm explaining how I would go about trying to figure it out. I would actively contact every single person in the military existing, as well as if I was calling the shots, that is, right? If I was a U.S. senator, I'd be like, you know what? I want to do a status check on every person in our military, and I want to find out exactly how many days each one was in the Middle East during the past 20 years in Afghanistan. I want a damn one big massive spreadsheet, 1 million people per tab or whatever, and I want to know exactly where the hell was everybody at. And let's look at how much money was spent. And then we got to see what they reported. And if they said there was 200,000 troops in Afghanistan, at this time, this 2-year period, and then it fell to 50,000, and then over here it was 250,000, and then it fell to 100,000. I'd back out those differentials and say, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. You're telling me you spent $2 million per person that was over there? That's a bunch of bullshit, or rhino shit, or donkey shit, or elephant shit. I'm tired. People are like, Bobby, why do you swear? Why do you use these curse words? It's like, folks, they stole trillions of dollars from us. Okay, if anybody should be insulted, why aren't you insulted that they stole trillions of dollars from the American people? We need to fight back through the legislative process, knock these bums out, and then go get our damn money back. That's step one, is knock them out. Step two, go get our cash back. Whoever stole it, somebody stole your bike as a kid, right? Guess what? You go get your damn bike back if you found out where that bike was, unless they broke it apart. Now, that might be the problem. They might have broke some of this apart. But there's also a side of me that thinks, maybe President Trump, maybe he knows something that he hasn't shared just yet, right? $10 trillion is the opening bid, because he knows these scumbags stole $10 trillion from the American people. We want our damn money back. And so, anyways, thinking of all this in the context of what's happening in the U.S. as we decouple from China, and there's price increases on U.S. soil, maybe some of these price increases are happening one time because a lot of the money stopped flowing out. Maybe we're not being fleeced as much. Some of it might be liquidity, right, being caused by easy monetary policy, all this stuff that's going on with the economy coming back online. I do believe there's definitely an element of that. There's also going to be an element of foreign money flowing into our markets, that people are scared. Now, these foreigners that are buying our stuff, especially if they're from a corrupt, evil, communist country, I do not think they should be allowed. And I think that we should, frankly, especially if it's been funded by the government, we should confiscate those assets. Let's start taking our 10 trillion back, as far as I'm concerned. And then the people that are communicating with the CCP, boot them right back out. Get them right out of this country. They're lucky they don't go to jail. You should see if they're doing anything nefarious on U.S. soil. But my whole point is that we need to take this stuff seriously. We need to fight back. And right now, what I'm calling for in terms of this fighting back is more civil engagement, more active citizenship, getting involved, taking our school back, end this crap, Red for Ed, this horrific communist propaganda they try to push onto us in our schools. We need to end that. We need to defund the university system in this country. I'm tired of the taxpayers subsidizing all this crap. These universities get all this money tax deferred. They grow their money tax deferred. They buy up real estate. They don't pay as much in taxes as everybody else. They build their little fiefdoms, and then they pay a professor $400,000, even though it's a nonprofit. It's a bunch of crap. These people should be paying the taxes, dismantle these false empires of people that are spreading and espousing horrible propaganda to our youth and to all these college students that are coming out thinking that communism is something that's cute. It's not cute. It's an evil ideology that's killed hundreds of millions of people over the years and caused nothing but pain, because they think it's okay to steal other people's work and identities. And so it goes hand in hand, folks. voter fraud, identity theft, fraud on economic fraud. It's all a playbook from the Communist Party. And this is what we're witnessing. We're witnessing firsthand communism infecting our system. And we need to do our part to take the medicine, end the flow of money to these people, make sure that we bring these corrupt people to justice, and that we take steps to correct the process, correct the system going forward. So that's where we're at right now. You know, the markets, like I said, they kind of brushed off this news, you know, as we speak. You know, the markets, the tech stocks are continue to move up, which is counterintuitive. If you believe inflation is real, inflation tends to move stock prices down that are faster growing companies, because they you know, the reason why it moves them down when this occurs is because you know, the growth rates, you have to use a higher cap rate. So the fact that they're going up, you know, in an inflationary number print like that is a sign that one of two things: either inflation is going to be short-lived, or this is something that worth watching for the change in direction, so to speak. But right now, I got to tell you, a lot of signals in the market based on how things would traditionally behave are definitely not what they would normally be, and not what they have historically been. And so it is fascinating to watch how all this stuff is not working the way it used to. And I can't tell how much of that is by design, by our government, possibly, if we're truly in the middle of a war. I don't know how much of it is a result of corrupt participants that have accumulated a lot of assets, and they have an easier time manipulating things. I do believe our SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, is outgunned. I think a $2 billion budget is way too small for a country that has $100 trillion and $120 trillion in assets. I think we need to expand, regulation and monitoring of our financial markets to look for predatory economic players, as well as nation states that might be using and manipulating our market against us. I do think it really is happening. I don't think this is something I'm imagining. I see it all the time. I've talked about a few names that I do think are being manipulated. You could look into them for yourself. And so that's where we're at, folks. I think that's it for now. So thank you again for chiming in. I'll be back at 8:30 to go over the greatest book ever written. Feel free to chime in then if you like. And otherwise, I will see everybody later. Tomorrow, I'll be back with this Piton Points on the 11th. So thank you again for chiming in. God bless.